Hi there. Do you know where we should be seated for the people? Here or over here? We have no secrets. Well, Jason and Tommy. Yeah. Here. How are you doing, Bonnie? Doing well. Yeah, doing very well. Good, good. Yeah, everybody make sure you turn your phones off.
School was over Monday.
Yeah. I think that
That was a really good season.
it was. The checkmates were sorry they had to cancel their last gig because it was so hot.
50 years old.
That's great. Oh, that'll be fun.
Y'all should- Paisley. So, and we're burying a time capsule. So
That's great.
if you have anything that you would like to put into the Times capsule about the county, why don't you send it over to me or Clay or something?
That's a great idea.
If it's something to be copied, we'll put it on like exit paper. Yeah, we're gonna have a big thing in the park.
Good.
We were gonna wait 50 years to open that. I said, y'all, can we wait 25? Because I don't think I will be around at 50. So,
That's great.
so we're gonna do a 25-year on it.
That's cool.
Yeah. Do you
That's very
remember Mayor Walker, Warren Walker? He's the parks. He's been there years.
Was he like the first Douglas Hill?
No, he's served the longest, like 12 years.
Sharon, do you know Bonnie Young?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
met.
she's the mayor of Douglas Hill.
Yeah,
Sharon,
so,
Hall. She's a.
He's
property-
97.
Oh,
So I don't think he's gonna make it, but
fun to have him there. That would
you know, he moved. This was really fun. His wife passed away, so he moved over to the Forum. Became president of the residents over there.
That's funny.
Had a sweet, sweet lady that I think they were, I don't call them boys, they were companions. And she passed away. And so now he's 97. He's starting to have some 97 health issues.
Oh, I'm having some 69-year-old issues, like tired, like
I'm tired of all this.
slowing down. Spring Valley.
I do not.
You ought to call him.
I've got a couple of people I really want to touch base with, like, you know, some of the newer mayors, because we had, what, 20 new ones last time, and how they're doing, and they're needing help, and,
That's good.
um,
How do the new mayors and officers of a satellite city get trained up?
well, Kentucky League of Cities sponsors certified officials training academy. And I'm not for sure if that passed in legislation. It wasn't mandatory, but it was highly suggested that if you are an incumbent mayor, especially, or council person or something, that you attend this so that you can understand, you know. The other thing that's really sad that you can't, and you'd have to put it on cities, but 2/3 of cities in Kentucky, elected officials are not at all.
Wow.
And so whether it's houses of 100 or,
Are
you
any of
know,
those in Jefferson County?
now, yeah, pretty much most of them now. J-Town is full-time. The larger, I would say, old fourth class and down, most of those folks are getting. I mean, I'm on my third term and I made $8,000 a year until this year. Run Douglas Hill. And, just depends on what you got going and how much you need to spend. But things that are desperate now is finding.
Well, it probably keeps some good people from being able to run seats.
Well, you think of how much time you've got. And you don't know halfway do it.
Well, you've got a pretty good sized city.
We're almost 6,000.
Yeah.
Because we've got the enclave and then we've got a new development at Burnett Ridge on Blankenbaker. And then probably by next year, Miss Rackenbach's 36 acres, that's been bought for development.
Bought that.
Scott Hagan. Yeah, so then there'll be about 35 acres left in the whole city.
Now, well, you think he'll make that into apartments like he did out long run?
Be surprised if he does some type of mixed use, probably commercial out front, and then probably
Yes,
some.
that's what we're looking at. You know, it's, people don't like change, but, you know, you shouldn't bother if you expect it to be 80 years, even though Miss Rackenbach had been in the family.
That's the one that's right next to the entrance of Douglas Hills, right? And right behind Southeast. So valuable or promise.
In that development,
piece of land.
we in that development in like 20 years past the Blankenbaker, you know, Walmart and all that was up there. And so then all of a sudden I get a phone call, this guy wants to put Luvino's.
What is that? An Italian restaurant?
Yeah, it's wine on tap. So the Luvino's came in. Next thing you know, an O'Reilly's comes in.
Please, will you silence your phone, please? Somebody's phone just.
Have been mine. So all of a sudden we've got development we've never had. A plus for the city. Of course, we got the enclave, which I absolutely love.
Well, I heard that somebody's supposed to be coming in that space.
Hey, Brian,
You're
are you
doing
going
like
to
a
stream
video
this?
golf?
Guy that put his own money in. And he has done this.
Sorry, Sonia?
I hadn't started streaming yet before you joined. Do you want me to stream it?
Streaming, yes, please.
Okay, can you make me the
Bars.
host so I could do that?
Yeah, it's there were some high end, like basically golf simulators, because my brother is actually working on. Yeah, they actually will move.
Do I just press start live
Or you
stream?
feel like you're on like if you got to
So
hit up.
where the participants, if you right click on it.
Cool.
Well, I know how to do that. I just didn't know if I was supposed to, if it's as simple as me pressing start live stream, you don't necessarily have to be
Oh,
there.
yeah.
No, it's, you start live streaming, then you fill out a few things.
Capsule do that.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Well, let me just menu that.
Oh, we're getting stuff.
Okay.
This is the,
Then I got a lot of history about JJ
where is it?
Stiller.
Oh, was he?
He also owned the Louisville Jockey.
Change role, make host. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all make yourself at home.
Okay.
That's what I've done for the last.
Is this the final meeting of the commission? Hey there. Good, how are you? For the commission. Colleen Younger, the PBA. My pleasure. Jason Hancock, our Chief of Staff.
How you doing, sir?
Tommy Hart, our Director of Assessment.
Nice to meet you.
Lacey Smith, our attorney.
That's coming in.
Evan Westfall.
The whole crap.
We did, because we aim to please. Evan Westfall is our Special Projects Director, and Melody Humphrey is the Director of all Home Rule Cities,
Home rule city.
of which Mayor Young is a officer.
Oh,
Probably will. Say so.
Senator Nemes represents the area that Higgs Buckman, remember Higgs Buckman? Long time.
Long time.
Higgs Buckman,
Yep.
Cook County.
Oh, no, he doesn't. Not all of them.
Yeah.
Hi. Doing well. How are you? Good. Yeah. Good. Good to see you too. Uh, I mean, did you send them to Brian? They are getting a packet. Everyone has a packet, so I don't know.
On the screen still, I just need to know.
Do you want it on the screen? I don't think it's necessary. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sonia. They need it at home for the. They've got.
One's phone is dinging.
I think we're going on the record to begin the meeting. This is the meeting, what is today? This is September the 8th, meeting of the commission. I think we've gone through we have the agenda. Can we call the roll, take the attendance, and we'll begin the meeting.
Representative Jason Nemus,
Here.
Earl Jones,
Present?
Senator Gerald Neal, Senator Julie Rocky Adams,
Here.
Senator Mike Nemus,
Present.
Representative Ken Fleming, Representative Pamela Stevenson, Councilmember Anthony Piagentini, Councilmember JaCory Arthur, Councilmember Cindy Fowler,
Here.
Mary Ann Butler, Shelby Williams Somerville,
Here.
Scott Schoenberg,
Present.
sorry, sir. Mayor Bonnie Jung,
Here.
and Chief Sean Josbeck.
Here.
Representative Pamela Stevenson, Councilmember JaCory Arthur, and Mary Ann Butler. Mr. Chair, you have 12 and a quorum.
Okay, let's begin the meeting. I think the first thing on the agenda is we have a testimony today from Colleen Younger, the PVA for the county. Welcome, Ms. Younger.
Thank you, sir.
We're pleased to have your remarks. please take the podium and let us hear your remarks.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the commission for having us here. We did appear before the GAP committee several weeks back, and we appreciate the opportunity when asked to demystify our work process and how we derive the property assessments for Jefferson County property. I would like to begin by saying I'd like to address some concerns regarding the transparency of our office, the uniformity of assessments we produce, and the recommendations this commission and Representative Nemes have made on adding another layer of audit oversight on the Jefferson County PVA. We take pride in the service we provide for the people of Jefferson County, and we have great confidence in the quality and fairness of the assessments we complete for nearly 300,000 parcels of residential and commercial land and property on the Jefferson County tax roll. The Jefferson County PVA operates at a level of quality and accuracy among the highest of all counties in the Commonwealth, as determined by statutory required audits and the annual review and certification of the assessment roll by the Kentucky Department of Revenue. Under my administration, we have undertaken immense, unprecedented efforts to increase transparency and accessibility for all Jefferson County taxpayers through our award-winning You Have a Right to Appeal public outreach campaign. We have confidence that our mass appraisal system meets and exceeds required industry standards, and our assessments meet the Department of Revenue's required ratios. In fact, with respect to transparency and accountability, we reach all property owners being reassessed in multiple ways. For instance, in 2022, Representative Nemes, when your district was reassessed, we offered 11 public meetings to inform the public with options to appeal their property in person or online. These included 2 meetings following the assessment mailing to assist with the appeal process. We sent 2 mailings, including a pre-assessment postcard invite to public meetings and a redesigned assessment notice providing key information on accessing the appeal process and options for assistance to each property owner receiving a reassessment. We advertised an integrated media campaign on radio, TV, and print, and social media to help spread the word to everyone in the reassessment areas. Each year, we request and are granted an extension of 10 days beyond the 13-day statutory appeal window. And so we extend that to 23 days of opportunity to appeal your property each year. PVA staff were stationed out at library branches in the Northeast and the South Central on weekdays during the open inspection period to provide in-person information and assistance with the appeal process and make it more convenient for taxpayers. I am actually saying Representative Nemes's name because he was present and met with us at the GAP committee. So some of this is a response to some of the concerns that were expressed at the GAP committee meeting. The suggestion of adding another layer, which is already covered under KRS 131.140, we see as a duplication of services and a burden on the taxpayer dollars that come into state government. DOR also completes annual reviews and certifications of our assessments to assure that standards of quality are met. They are designed to ensure fairness, equitability, and uniformity of assessments across Jefferson County. We do question the need for additional oversight when thorough processes are already in place and outlined in state law, KRS 131.140, reference in your packets, Exhibit 2, under the Kentucky Department of Revenue Assessment Administration Manual, Chapter 9.1, relating to assessment quality and equalization across the state. which gives a direct quote out of the assessment manual to carry out the monitoring responsibilities delegated to the Department of Revenue. The department conducts performance audits in every PVA office. The purpose of these audits is to ensure quality and equalization across the state. The actual audit process includes an inspection of maps and records and an appraisal study of real property and an evaluation of the overall effectiveness of the PVA office. After the audit is completed, the department prepares a comprehensive report based on the information gathered from the audit for submission to the Legislative Research Commission. Exhibit 3 provides copies of our most recent audits for your review. Feedback from the Department of Revenue in our 2019 audit included the comment, Jefferson County PVA has achieved an exceptional level of assessment and accuracy for residential property for 2019. The median ratio and COD figures indicate very equitable and uniform assessments. The office does an excellent job of processing the immense amount of information. The office has met all guidelines prescribed by the Department of Revenue. All pertinent characteristics are readily available. There are no recommendations I would make at this time. It is essential to understand Kentucky's quadrennial assessment calendar when reviewing assessment statistics. Properties are reassessed on a rolling 4-year calendar. Please reference Exhibit 4 in your folder for our quadrennial plan, which makes up the rolling 4-year plan. Generally, unless a property is sold or remodeled, the assessment will remain the same, or remodeled rather. The assessment will remain the same, unchanged, until the next 4-year assessment cycle. Local area real estate markets heat and cool, as we all know, unevenly, but generally removed from the reassessment year, the ratio is typically farther away from the standard set at the first year of reassessment. This is especially true in a rapidly changing real estate market like we've had over the last few years. In Exhibit 5, we have provided statistics comparing assessment ratios in the applicable assessment year, which shows actually how the farther you get away from that year 1 of reassessment into year 2, to year 3, and to year 4, the ratios begin to go down as you head toward the next reassessment year. We've provided those statistics comparing ratios in the applicable assessment years and how those ratios changed in prior and subsequent years in each of the 9 reassessment market areas of Jefferson County, along with relevant sections of the Department of Revenue's Assessment Administration Manual explaining measurements of assessment quality. Any PVA in the Commonwealth of Kentucky who fails to meet these statutory requirements is subject to an emergency audit and an emergency reassessment by the Department of Revenue. This happened about 5 years ago in Northern Kentucky when they found a PVA there under assessing properties. Department of Revenue came in and did an emergency reassessment in Northern Kentucky's Boone County. Our results consistently exceed expectations. For example, the 2019 audit resulted in a median ratio for residential property of 94 and a coefficient of dispersion of 6.1. The industry standard for the COD, which is a measurement that measures the sales against the median and how how much distance there is and disparity in that. The industry standard for COD is 15 and below for residential property. In Jefferson County, ours was 6.1. As you can see, again, a stellar COD. Altogether, these scores represent quality and uniformity far exceeding the standards of the International Association of Assessing Officers and the Department of Revenue. Again, thank you for the opportunity to address concerns by the commission and certainly co-chair Representative Nemus on his recommendation. We disagree on the point that public tax dollars should be used to create additional overview for a process that is already in place, KRS 131.140. And the creation of a 5-member group to double check the DOR seems unnecessary to us, and as proposed, would not guarantee that the commercial, or that the board would even include someone with commercial appraisal experience, which commercial properties take up about 25,000 parcels in the parcel count of 300,000 in Jefferson County, and also represent about 24 billion in tax dollars or 24 billion in assessment dollars on the assessment roll. So we are opposed to this recommendation. We hope that we have allayed any concerns. We are happy to answer any questions or give you any information or documentation that you should ask for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Younger. Any questions by any of the commissioners? Mr. Piagentini.
Thank you. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Some maybe technical questions. So in your exhibit, one of the reports, I see it breaks into 3 sections: residential, commercial, farm. Let's stick to residential just for ease here. And farm is increasingly smaller because of
Right.
residential sprawl. So commercial might be interesting, but in residential, I'm looking at this spreadsheet,
Right?
and it was the first report. It says Exhibit 3-9.
Okay.
That helps for reference.
Okay.
It's not a page number, sorry.
Let's see.
And my question is this the sample that was used to confirm the ratios for residential for this report?
Yeah, well, that is the sample that was submitted to Department of Revenue in our reassessment in our recaps.
So there's 20 residences that are used as your sample size, is that correct?
Oh, no. Jason, you want to answer that?
Yes, the Department of Revenue.
Sorry, yeah,
Sorry.
it should be on. Thank you.
The Department of Revenue, it is spelled out in the statute that they select 20 residential properties, and that is what is used in this report.
When DOR comes in, after we have performed our inspection of thousands, sometimes over 100,000 properties, DOR comes in and grabs a sample of that. Yes, the answer to your question there. I thought you meant, is that the sample we used? That's the sample DOR used
Yes.
in
So
looking
back up.
at,
Thank you.
Okay.
So to back up, how many residential residences are there in the county? Rough number, give or take 10,000.
about 250?
250? That's.
I thought we had more, I thought,
It is more than that. I'm sorry. We have about 25,000 resident or commercial properties, 295,000 overall,
yeah,
Right, but
270.
250 residential properties.
270,000.
yeah,
Residential
Yeah.
properties.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay,
yeah, it's not 100, it's
So-
more like 270, 280,000 residential.
right. And then you're assessing every 3 years, 4 years, 3?
4.
4. So 1/4 of that is
All right, Steve.
80,000, right?
Just let me know, okay?
Please
We
turn your
love
microphone
you,
off.
so just
Please
take
turn,
care of-
if you're online, please turn your microphone off.
So, first of all, a sample of 20 in a population that large is not statistically significant. The minimum that any statistician would give to attempt to get to statistical significance, and I realize it's statutory requirement, so this is not necessarily hitting you. It's
Right.
the process,
We're just fulfilling our obligation.
of course.
Right.
Would be at least 100, at least. And so my other question is, how do I think you said your office supplies them is the process. How is that generated?
Well, we submit all sales.
Yeah.
And one of the previous to Brian, I believe we showed a sample of the sales that we send to the Department of Revenue, and it's usually 5,000-6,000 sales. And then they would select a sample of the reassessment area from there.
Okay, so Department of Revenue figures out who the sample properties are. You don't.
We do not.
Got it.
Right.
Okay. So number one, I think bluntly, the sample size is too small to get statistical reliability.
That's fair.
And again, you're fulfilling the statute, so.
That's right. That's fair.
to look at
That's a
the
fair
statute.
comment. Absolutely.
The other thing, my other question is, look, lots of things to beat up Metro government on. One of the things I think we've done generally well is data transparency. We have portals now that we put all this data, raw data out. And we have some very active, some of them follow me on Twitter, that's why I know, members of the public who do all this number crunching. They pull the data, they futz with it, they come back and make recommendations. And I think it's great. It actually provides transparency, and we get sort of a group think thing going on, crowdsourcing, if you will. How much of your data, albeit, maybe de-identified, although I think all this is public record, frankly, but how much of this data is available via online portal so that, again, one of these members of the public could run their own numbers?
We have first of all, let me start by saying this. The Jefferson County PVA and every other PVA office in the state of Kentucky is not a fully funded state agency. And so we rely on income from our data and from our website to be able to fund our office. And part of that is the website, obviously. We do not allow anyone to come onto our website and just pull data. However, all of the information is listed on the website, but they can certainly purchase data. And we also provide data through open records request, free of charge. We just did it this week with Mr. In fact, he may be working with you guys. I'm not sure. But yeah, we charge for our website. We charge for the data because it supplements our budget.
Just out of curiosity, how much do you charge?
$35 a month.
And what portion of your office's revenue is I'm going to wrap this up because it's a little off topic, but what portion of your office's revenue is made by that?
Our budget, obviously all of our personnel is funded by the state. The rest of our budget comes from home rule city, assessment row purchases, and the website. So I would say we probably bring in somewhere around $500,000 a year on both of those combined.
And the final question, it looks like the last assessed year that an audit was conducted on was 2019. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Young,
Thank you.
go ahead.
You better eat that. It's really melting fast. I had to drink mine.
Could y'all
I'm
cut
sorry,
off your
who's speaking?
microphone if you don't mind?
I thought Mr. Fleming had the floor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Who audits you all?
Department of Revenue.
Department of Revenue. How often does that happen?
It's a biennial audit under KRS 131140. And the last audit was in 2019. I'm assuming that we have not had one due to the COVID issues.
You assume or you don't know?
No, I'm assuming that's why they haven't audited.
Oh, okay.
No, I know that we
Oh,
have
okay.
not
No,
been audited.
good. That's
No,
not
I know if we've been audited or not.
good.
Yeah.
And what was the conclusions of the finance administration's audit?
Pardon?
What was the conclusions of the last audit that they
You have that copy you have a copy of the audit.
Is it in here?
packet.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And I appreciate you doing this, but getting this to the last minute, I can't go through and digest this. If you give this a couple of days beforehand, that'd have been much better. I can ask you a little more better questions. So, so I'm a little bit disadvantaged in doing this. So I guess I want to ask you, would you have any issues or problems if if the state auditor come in and making sure you go through the correct processes and procedures and
The
so?
state does already come in. The state Department of Revenue is the state.
The state auditor, ma'am. The state.
We
state-
we get a biannual audit through the state auditor's office. We welcome any type of overview. We have nothing to hide. We are very transparent. The state auditor comes in and audits all of the financial records of the Jefferson County PVA. And they do that every 2 years. And the only problem,
And that's to make sure that the monies that you receive aren't misspent by your office.
exactly.
That's not, I don't think that's what we're talking about.
No. But that's what I'm trying to make that distinction. My only issue with someone like the auditor's office coming in is, do they have assessment experience?
They can always contract out, and that happens on quite a few occasions on various other departments to go through. If they don't have the expertise, but they know they can go outside and get somebody to help with that. Furthermore, they can draw on a lot of resources to help go through that process.
You guys are the lawmakers, not me.
Well, I just want to see if you're willing to do that, because I appreciate y'all. I appreciate your, in terms of your confidence in your process procedures. But I think part of the concerns we have is exactly that, to going through that process and procedure. And so in terms of being transparent, that'd be great.
Okay, can I ask you a question? I would like to know what the concerns are. Because the only concerns that I have heard were the concerns that were expressed in the GAP meeting. And those were concerns that we were under-assessing inside the Watterson, particularly the West End and
I didn't say the West
and
End.
Crescent
All
Hill.
three.
And that we were over-assessing outside of the Watterson.
I don't think that's exactly a fair representation of what I said, but I'll
There's four other people that were in
yeah, I'll
the
report
meeting.
that, but that's not what I said.
Okay,
I was in that meeting too, and that's not what I heard.
okay.
I think it's important, since we are on the record, there was no record kept at the committee, that we understand for this purpose, what was the concern expressed at the committee that the witness is here to address.
Thank you, sir.
You want me to outline it?
Please,
Oh,
please,
yeah.
yes.
So again, there's no allegation of any kind of wrongdoing. There's no allegation certainly of any kind of malfeasance or any kind of bad faith. Put that up front.
Right.
So Ms. Younger, I've never made that allegation.
I agree. I do agree with that.
I don't.
You
believe
did use the word under-assessing and
I
over-assessing.
didn't use over-assessing. I wouldn't do that because that would be very bad politics for me. I would never have done that. Here's what I said, and here's the situation. What we're supposed to do is we're supposed to get every property at market value, 100%. And we've got grace in there. We try to get it between 90 and 110. That's the ratio report, but whatever it's supposed to be. What I've found, some people had a hunch. I had a number of realtors come to me with this. And that's when I poked the numbers, and I provided that information to you. And I readily admitted up front that those were random samplings. They may not be representative of the entire, they're much more representative of 20 in the whole county. We don't even know where these are. I picked 5, I think it was 5, maybe it was 4 particular areas, 15 to 20 sales in those areas to kind of poke the concern that I had received from a number of realtors. And the concern is this. The best way to understand it is if you have a $200,000 home and you have it in area 1 through 9, okay? Because there are 9 areas, right? In JC.
Right.
Yep. And you do rolling assessments every 4 years. So year 1, it'll be 1 and 4, for example. Year 2, it'll be 2, 3, and whatever they are.
Right.
You've got a schedule for that. So the concern that has been brought to me is if you have a $200,000 home in area 3, its ratio is much further away than its market value, or has a bigger ratio, however you put it in your language. Its assessed value is much further away than market value than it is in area 9. If that's true systemically, if there's an explanation for it about when it's assessed, which is one thing that your office has suggested, or if it's an explanation of there are many more cells in a particular area which make it easier to get to an accurate assessment, those things are perfectly appropriate explanations for them. I'm not sure that's right or that's wrong. I don't know. And that's why we've asked for this review. So my concern was never that anything's overassessed, but never would have said that. It's more highly assessed or higher assessed than in other areas. It's fair to say that. I don't think anybody's taxes are over, no one's overassessed on their taxes. That's not my allegation. What I'm saying is some people are lower assessed for the same value of a home if they live in one area of town than they are in another. That's the concern. Been brought to me by a number of realtors. I've poked the numbers and it looks to be true. The reason I poked the numbers is because if it didn't appear to be true, I would have moved on to something else, but they appear to be pretty stark. And what I've seen is they appear to be 20%. So in the suggestion of the $200,000 home, that's $40,000 difference that someone is assessed for tax rolls. If it's true, it may not be true. And you said that you're open for any kind of
Absolutely.
yeah, well, this is one of them. And so
Absolutely. Look, can I respond to that?
So we need the review to make sure. And if at the end of the game, the end of this review, it is as you suggest, that's great. I'm gonna hold your hand up high and declare you Rocky Balboa.
I don't want to
If
be
it's
Rocky
not
Balboa.
true,
I just want to do my job
If it's-
honestly with
sorry.
integrity.
And that's why we need this review. If it's not true, you do it honestly, integrity. I'm not questioning that. If it's not true that the assessments are even across the community, then we need to figure out how we can help you get them even.
Well, okay, let me just interject. And we have other people that were in the same meeting here today that were at the GAP meeting, including Mr. Schoenberger and Julie and Pamela Stevenson. I don't know if Pamela's on there. I'm pretty sure that when we reviewed the information, Mr. Nemus, that you submitted from that GAP meeting, that your comparison that you made from Area 8's reassessment, which had been done the year before in 2022, and you compared it because you did speak about areas 1 and 4 in that meeting. You did. And that is the West End and Shively all the way out Dixie.
Right.
And you compared those numbers to the previous numbers before Area 1 and 4 had been reassessed.
Yeah, I compared them to all of them. That's right. And your explanation was because 1 and 4.
Can we hear what our explanation was?
Go ahead.
Well, as I stated earlier, in 2000, and let me just explain. In 2023, we reassessed MLS areas 1 and 4, which is all of the West End, Shively, all the way out the Dixie Highway corridor.
All the way to the county line.
All the way to the county line. We reassessed those properties this year. Okay. So they are at the high end of the ratio this year. As we go through the quadrennial calendar and we get to the 4th year of those properties, 4 years away from those properties having been reassessed, those ratios, they go down dramatically. So in other words, if they were reassessed at 90% this year, by the time we get to the next reassessment period, they may be at 75.
I don't quibble with that. And I think that's so easy to prove because when you measure it year by year, you measure more than one area. And so I went back and I looked at 4. I don't think 4 was on my sheet. I went back and looked at 4, and 1 and 4 were assessed at the same year. There was still a discrepancy. 4 was much higher than 1. So it won't be hard to prove or disprove. I don't know what the big deal is here. I'm not making an assertion. I'm just saying there's concerns that have been raised to me. I want to see if they're right or wrong. I don't think it's a big deal.
Jason, would you
Well,
like?
You know, and Tommy can speak to this a little bit better than I can on Exhibit 5-1. You know, it is a chart. And what we've done here is to show that the year, if you start in year 1, what those assessments reflect. And then I think it shows everybody's comments here that yes, as you go further away from that first year reassessment, that ratio does go down. But then after we reassess, it goes back up. But it happens equally to every area across the county, depending on the sales. I can't predict the market. We've all seen what the market's been doing. If the market were to change in the future, it may show different numbers. But when we found, Ms. Nemus, when you did pull Area 1 sales, it was not the assessment year that you pulled was not the 2023 reassessment.
That's right.
When I looked at those assessments, it was the one before that, it was the 2019 assessed values. So yes, when you were comparing the 23 sales to the 2019 assessment, you're right. Those numbers are exactly what they are. But after we reassessed, if you look at those numbers, they're much closer. And then, you know, once again, if you look at the 5.1,
Can
I
you-
think we're all in agreement with what it does.
What exhibit are you referring to? I can't tell one exhibit from the other.
Exhibit 5.1 is, it's right on there's a
Instead of
number
being
on there.
separate, where are the exhibit numbers on the document?
Top left.
They're at the top left. They're on the top left of the documents.
So what's the number we're talking about?
5-1.
5.1, sir.
We're lawyers and we go by what's called Bates numbers, which are always at the bottom right. That's why we're looking for there. So
Okay.
we do have a number of questions.
Okay.
You need, but you were speaking, so I want to let you.
I mean, I think I think for your point, your questions about 2 and 3, why were they lower? It matches this chart. It's the furthest away from the year of reassessment. Why were 8 and 9 higher? If you ask me, because it was the first year after the reassessment. So it matches this chart. We're not disagreeing with any of that. But, you know, if we look back to 1 and 4 and you compare current sales to what we just did in 2023, it's much closer than what.
Good. Then the
what we-
review
than
will
what
be
we saw before.
and the review will come back and you guys will look beautiful. Yes,
So-
yes, sir. I'm sorry.
So your area particularly was reassessed last year, 2022. And so their ratio is high first year after reassessment. Next year, it'll start going down. Next year, go down even more. By the time you get to that 4-year expiration of that quadrennial window, you're going to see area 8 is far lower than it was, than maybe some of the other areas that have been recently reassessed.
Yes, sir. And then we're going to go to questions. Yes, sir.
So I'm going to give you a couple numbers. So for areas 8 and 9, prior to the reassessment,
Areas 8 and 9 are.
the areas 8 and 9, area 9 is Prospect. Area 8 is basically out there, northern Lake Forest area, things like that.
Thank you.
I think it's anything north of Fern Creek to the river.
Pretty much. So before they were reassessed in 2022, the ratios at that point were 78% in 8, 76% in 9. As soon as we did the reassessment next year, when we started looking at the ratios, those ratios now went to 86% and 86% for those two areas. 1 and 4, which we just did, prior to the reassessment, that ratio was 77% in 1, and it was 73% in 4. Now, looking at the sales that are coming in this year after we've done our reassessment, we're now sitting at 84% for 1 and 84% for 4. So right in line with what the areas that you're sitting at in 8 and 9. So it's just the way the assessment cycle falls is why some of the ratios may not be the same for respective areas all across the county. But they do catch up
Okay.
because of that quadrennial plan.
All right. Thank you. Senator. Councilman Arnold.
I'm sorry, can you confirm the last audit from the Department of Revenue was done in 2019,
Correct.
about 4 years ago? And when you say biannual, do you mean twice a year or every other year?
Every
Every other year.
other year, biennial.
So we should have had one in 21, 23. So we're
And
missing
I,
a couple.
as I said to,
I think those are different. Just to be clear, DOR was 2019, Jacory. The auditor comes in for a different purpose. That's every 2 years. That's my understanding.
we're audited by 2
For
agencies.
2 different purposes.
Department of Revenue audits our assessment levels. The auditor audits the financial side of the PVA.
How long
So
do each of those usually take?
I'll say that, you know, one of the things that we do get, yes, we got the 2019, we got that report in 2022. I really believe it's supposed to have been for 2020, but they used 2019 because of the COVID year. So our next one should be coming up, being done sometime this fall.
Okay, when people appeal, were you going to add something to that?
Pardon?
Were you about to add something to his
No.
answer? Okay, when people appeal, do you take into consideration age or disability status?
We cannot take that into consideration. We base our assessments on activity, sales activity in each respective area and condition of these homes.
Understood. And I'm sure you're aware of a bill that was filed to make those exemptions, are you?
Which exemptions?
For age 65 and older or disability status?
What was the bill that was filed?
to exempt those from property tax increases?
Well, I will say this, Councilman Arthur. 2 years ago, our team developed a packet, as I mentioned to you, Representative Nemes. We developed a packet because the market was so fast and we could not keep up with what was the changing values and the sales prices. We did some research and we looked around the United States in different cities and what they were doing to bring relief to taxpayers in an erratic market. And we developed a packet of information called Circuit Breaker Solutions to an Erratic Market. 2 years ago, I sent that to the state legislature and also to the Republican majority attorney, Mr. Andrew, I'm not sure what his last name is. Anyway, he works for, he's an attorney for LRC. And we asked for consideration in looking at this problem with rising property values in this erratic market. We didn't get a response. I sent it the next year. We did not get a response. So I understand what you're saying, and I am as concerned about it and have been as concerned, which is why we did 11 public meetings last year. We did six or seven this year throughout the reassessment areas to try and educate people and encourage them to appeal if they believe we've gotten it wrong. Because there's a lot of reasons why we might get it wrong. First of all, we don't know the condition of the interior of your home. We don't get inside, and we're only going on the outside. And so we ask people to give us photographs. And, you know, we extend the appeal window. We go into the neighborhoods and go to the libraries and to hold extended appeal season from a 13-day statutory window to a 23-day statutory window. We've done a lot, but we have no control. The legislature does. You all have some control over what you can do in this erratic market, and I really hope that you would take a look at it. But I have no control over that. I am bound by statute, Councilman Arthur, to do what we do.
Understood. And I'll just say there was a bill filed to alleviate some folks, and I would hope, based on what you just said about that package, you would lend your support to that.
I'm not aware of the bill. I'm not aware of the bill.
So, are you good? Okay, I want to know, you mentioned that at the GAPS meeting. I hadn't heard it before then. It sounds like it's a good plan. If you would submit that, not to just leadership or whatever, I wasn't in leadership then, but if you would just submit that to all the Jefferson County delegation, Gerald should get it, I should get it, Ken should get it. It shouldn't, I mean, you're ours and we're very happy to have you and we need to know your plan. It's the first I'd heard of it is at the GAPS meeting, but it sounds like a really good plan. I want to work with you on some of those aspects. We're going to go with Tony Piazzatini and then Senator Nemes. Okay. Senator Nemes, go. Yes, sir.
We're a little off subject with that bill because that's nothing to do with the recommendation. Just Corey, I want to work with you on that because it was my bill and I didn't see your recommendation. So afterwards or whatever, send me that. We'll work on the bill. It's for elderly people and handicapped people, but it's not anything to do with this recommendation. It is a constitution, in the Constitution, that you have to assess all property.
That's right.
Equal. So you.
100% fair cash value.
Right. You cannot distinguish.
Right.
But I can run a bill we'll talk about that later.
Right.
But we're off the subject on this recommendation.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman. Go ahead, Colleen, and then Tony.
I just wanted to say that in that circuit breaker packet that we developed several years ago, there are a multitude of options and features that other cities and states are doing to bring relief in this crazy market that we've had over the last several years.
Thank you. I do want to explore a quick question about Exhibit 5.5-1.
Okay.
I'm rather interested in this one because you could argue it controls for year by looking at assessment year, 1 year after reassessment. So you've eliminated the variability of a variety of assessment years in 1 year, right? So in 2019, these zones are assessed and these aren't, right? You eliminated that in this chart. which I like. I think in some of the instances, we see what you would expect. We see year one after reassessment, which is the actual reassessment, 2, 3, assessment year is the worst, right? Should be going down. And then you see it shoot back up.
Right.
That's only true with that's only true of 5 of the zones. Areas, excuse me. 4 of them continue to go down even in the reassessment year. Excuse me, year one after reassessment. So if you look at the chart, it's area 2, area 3. The blues get a little funky, so I'm going to try to interpret these shades of blue in here, but I believe it's area 7 and area 5 maybe. Don't quote me on that because the shades of blue are tough to read. But 4 of the areas from the assessment year to 1 year after reassessment get worse in their median assessment ratio, which is the exact opposite of what happens and you would expect to happen, and that you've explained should happen in the 5 other areas.
Okay, so I know what you're referring to, and that was at the height of the pandemic. Our office was closed to the public. Libraries were closed to the public. The taxpayers did not have any opportunity except online if they had a home computer, many don't, to appeal their property. And so what we did in areas 2 and 3 in 2020 was we actually modified our original quadrennial plan, and we put on all of the sales in areas 2, which is the Highlands, all the sales in areas 3, which is St. Matthews, Crescent Hill, and all of the permits that we get for remodels. So we added all of those to the assessment roll that year. We were at the height of the pandemic. People would not have had an opportunity to appeal their property because public offices were closed, the libraries were closed, and if you didn't have a home computer, you would just be out of luck. And we did not want to do anything to usurp a person's right to appeal their property value. So we put on the sales and the permits, but that was the modification of our quad plan that year.
So make sure I understand your answer.
Okay.
Because theoretically, if you lose, let's just say the whole community lost their, or one area lost their appeal rights, you would expect that their median assessment ratio would be very high, close to 100%, because nobody appeals up, they appeal down.
Well, people do appeal up.
Well, they're fools.
Very few.
Sure, yeah, right. No, they're very honest people that
Right.
shock my core. But anyway,
Okay,
bottom line is, or they want to sell their house. Yeah, good point. So, but the point is the vast majority of people appeal down.
Right.
So you would expect the ratio to go down, but these go down and they didn't have their appeal rights. So I think what you're saying is you intentionally under-assessed.
No,
Sorry.
we didn't underassess anything.
I want to interrupt you, sir.
No, it's okay because I'm really confused.
No, and I understand.
Rights, you would expect it to be even higher.
And that makes sense. What Colleen said to clarify is that year for areas 2, 3, and 7, they were scheduled. Because it's such a large area in 2, 3, and 7, that was back in 2020.
It was over 120,000 properties.
We pushed that assessment to 2021. So in 2020, the bulk of our reassessment was sales and permits across the county. So we pushed that to the next year. We modified our quad plan with the Department of Revenue. So our original was 237. 2020 happened. We pushed it to 2021 and we had to add another area. So we added areas 5 to that. The subsequent year, the 2022 year, it would have been a little different. I can get you a copy of the modified quad plan to kind of explain it because in essence, what we did was we pushed to the year. So those ones that you're seeing that are going down, it's actually because it's almost year 2 because we had already done the analysis, we'd already completed all that review. So we pushed that to the
Right.
following year.
And then just one additional question, even if let's take those four out for a minute.
Okay.
Let's assume everything you're saying is accurate. They are just total crazy COVID outliers, right? Even amongst the ones that followed a more traditional path, we are below, if you just look at the graph, I don't have to run, an Excel trend line, I can see it, right?
Mhm.
The trend is down, right? So I'm curious as to why, if you look at the dispersion, year one after reassessment on the left side of the graph, and you look at dispersion on the right side of the graph, there's a whole 5% shift down in the median assessment ratio amongst all areas. So what's happening there?
Go ahead, Tommy.
So,
Tommy, you want to come up here?
no, it's fine, right? As you're well aware, okay. As you're well aware of, as soon as COVID hit, the market for real estate has just,
Loaded.
gone wild. The appreciation that we've seen in the marketplace is unprecedented, So what's happened now is it's moving so fast that we're playing catch up every year. We work in arrears, our analysis, basically. So we're always trying to catch up. So at 85%, which, is what we're operating at, it gets down to 75 right before the reassessment year. That's just telling us that, hey, look, we've got to reassess more to get up to the 90 to 110% level. The level of assessment is what the ratio that we have to obtain. These sales ratios are what tell us that how much we need to reassess. So when we're at 85%, we're saying, all right, well, we need to move, the market, we're still 15% away of 100% in essence. So I don't want you to think that these ratios this is what they're measuring us on. It's the level of assessment is actually what we're being measured on.
Thank you. Bonnie, you're up, and then we're going to vote.
Yes.
I don't think
Ms.
there's any
Younger,
other people, but
you have a tremendous amount of great staff. I've known a lot of them for several years. I'm on my third term. We do purchase our taxes from you guys that you all print out for us. I just have a question. I'm real big on education. Are there qualifications for the folks that work in your office that are doing some of these assessments? Do they, when you hire them, I know we talked about it's hard to find auditors right now and that kind of thing. Are they required to have some sort of certification knowing that?
We have a very strong commitment to education, to staff education. Of course, in order to be PVA, you first have to pass a test. And then in order to be an employee at the PVA, you don't have to have any experience, but we prefer you do. And then we train people, and the Department of Revenue has a full-scale education program that leads to designations, the Certified Kentucky Assessor, the Senior Kentucky Assessor. And so, for instance, in order to become a Certified Kentucky Assessor designee, you have to have had 90 hours. It's about 90 hours of education, all assessment classes, and all around the law of assessing and appraising.
So is this volunteer mostly, or do you mandate it out of your staff?
No, we pretty strongly encourage those to. We have a highly qualified staff.
Right.
Tommy was a commercial appraiser. Jason is a CKA, SKA. Melody is a
they all get
CKA,
their
SKA. I am a CKA licensed real estate agent. Evan is getting ready to get his CKA. So we are all, and we have more CKAs and SKAs in our office than anywhere across the state. So our people are highly trained. They are encouraged to get the education, and most of them do.
Great, thank you
And
so much.
I would add that of the 10 people that are performing these valuations, 6 have their certified Kentucky assessor and senior Kentucky assessor. The other 4, they are working toward, they can't get them right now because they just started and they're newer. But they have been taking classes to get to that. And so when they get to that years of experience, then they will have those, basically,
There's a 3-year and a 5-year
yes,
requirement
3 years.
of longevity to be able to get your designation.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for appearing. I just want to make a comment. It's something that, that I think some of us have been dealing with now for a while on the commission. Obviously, some of us have information, and we're pursuing that information. It's unfortunate that the process that we're engaged in often doesn't allow us or doesn't give us the resources to sort of run some of those concerns to ground before they get to the point of being issues that the commission wants to take further. My own view is this is one of those.
Right.
But I'm certain, based on your report and your testimony today and your staff, that you'll be able to withstand whatever comes at you if you indeed have to have some additional review.
Absolutely. And as I said, we're not running from any type of additional review. We believe that the process is already in place. And I will make one parting comment, if you would, humor me just a minute. And that is that for an outside group, a board, to come in, whether they're residential appraisers or real estate agents, they have to know something about mass appraisal, because mass appraisal is very different from single property residential and commercial appraisal. We're looking at it on a much larger scale. We're not drilling down on your home individually. So, I would, if this motion or suggestion passes, I think that is something that you have to consider, is that mass appraisal is very different from just regular property appraisal. So thank you all very much for listening to us today. If you have any afterthoughts, please feel free to let us know and we'll be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make one comment. All right, I just want to make a comment. I appreciated your presentation, and it clarified a few things in my mind, but it was very clear to me. But this issue you just raised about the mass appraisal seems to be crucial to our understanding of how you do your work and the conclusions you reach. So are you suggesting that it would be helpful if that was part of our motion so that we can make sure that that perspective, we comparing apples and apples and not apples and oranges, so to speak?
Well, and I think, yes, I do. I think that that's very important to make sure that we are comparing apples to apples. And I'm not really sure how you do that. I don't know how we've got a residential appraiser in here. Sharon Hall's here today. I don't know how, oh, sorry. You want to come up here, Sharon? You want to say anything? She uses our values every day and our website every day. And
Well, let me just say this. The reason why I'm raising that is that seems to be crucial to this. And I just heard you say that you don't know how you do that. And
that's what she just said. She does single residential appraising. And it's very different from doing what we do.
I understand that, but what I'm trying to do is, it seems like it's essential to assess or make a determination of what you're doing, and I use the term apples to apples, that mass appraisal piece is crucial to that understanding. Then I thought I heard you say, I don't know how you incorporate that in what we're doing here. Is that
Right.
what I just?
Yes, that's what
Could you
I.
expound just a little bit more on that. I just-
Well, obviously, our process, our assessment process is very different if you are an assessor in the PVA office than if you are a single residential property appraiser in the community, because you're looking at a subject property. In our work, we're looking at
Mass.
the hundreds of thousands of properties.
So does this motion, as you understand it, or this proposed motion, as you understand it, will it get us necessarily to apples? That's what I'm trying to find out.
I'm not sure, I'm not sure how, I'm not, Mr. Nemus, I don't know, have you all decided how you would figure that piece out, or?
The people that are, the 5 persons that'll be put on the committee to look at this, they're going to be highly qualified. 3 of them, at least, 2 of them at least are realtors, one's an appraiser, one of them appointed by the mayor, and one of them appointed by League of Cities. So I think that's incumbent in the analysis that they would be conducting.
Well, can we make, thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I may, address the chair there.
Please.
So if we're gonna make a motion, I think transparency is good. And particularly when you deal in these particular areas, how can you argue against getting things right and making sure they're correct? But that also raises a question in my mind as to what measure they're gonna use. Perhaps if we do have the motion, which I'm inclined to support, is that we have some language in there that makes sure that that any assessment that they include an analysis of the relevance of someone with experience in mass appraisals to input this process in some way. And I may not be saying it right. It may be some other language, but I just want to encourage that when the motion presumably goes forward.
Going along with what Gerald said, here's my suggested revision. You have it in front of you, Gerald?
I'm sorry.
You have it in front of you? I want to read my suggested revision to you.
Go ahead.
Okay, it is, there's a sentence that begins further. Further concerning transparency, the commission recommends that the PVA annually demonstrate that assessments are consistent throughout the county and uniformity exists among property types with the goal to achieve more equitable and uniform assessment role, with an understanding and analysis of mass appraisals rather than just single appraisals. That might not be the right language, but that's what I think the concept we're getting at.
Right, and we can work on it between here and.
Great.
My assumption is that we're talking about is appraisals done pursuant to property valuations for tax purposes as opposed to valuations for sale purposes, which is what I assume that a realtor would do singly. So it may be appropriate to put it that way. And I would suggest that we eliminate the word more, since there's no evidence in the record.
Where was that?
More equitable, that simply be equitable if we're going to put it in, if we're going to move.
I don't see the word. Tell me where the word is, we'll strike it.
One other thing that I'd like
I think
for
we
you
should,
all to know,
I think we should
if I,
leave while we're ahead.
okay, can I just say one more thing?
Nope, that's,
Okay, because in terms of equitability, in terms of equitable and fair and equitable property values, a few years ago, our staff actually created a way in our technology system to compare only remodeled houses to remodeled houses and unremodeled houses to unremodeled houses. That was huge because years prior to that, your home that was getting reassessed that was remodeled may have been compared to his home that was getting reassessed that was unremodeled. And so there was this systemic inequity in the process. And we created a way to even that up and to make it a more fair process by creating the remodeled category in our system versus the unremodeled category. So, again.
Mr. Chairman, my motion is that we vote on the recommendation as it exists with two changes. One change by you, Mr. Chairman, that is to delete the word more, where it says a more equitable, and it would just say an equitable, and to include the concept of Senator Neal, and however we want to put it, with the understanding that this be a for tax assessment or mass appraisal, whichever we decide to go for. With those two changes, I make a motion that we approve this recommendation.
Second.
time to vote.
Jason Nemus,
Yes.
Earl Jones,
Present.
Gerald Neal, Julie Rocky Adams,
Yes.
Mike Nemeth,
Yes.
Ken Fleming, Pamela Stevenson, Anthony Piagentini, Jacory Arthur, Cindy Fowler,
No.
Marilyn Butler, Shelby Williams Somerville,
Yes.
Scott Schoenberger,
Yes.
Bonnie Jeong,
Yes.
and Sean Dreisbach.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 10 yes votes, 1 no vote, and 1 present vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. You want to wait till,
No, let's go. We'll probably be another time on debating whatever we pull up.
okay, we're going to proceed now to item 35. This again is one proposed by Mr. Nemus and Mr. Fleming. Somebody want to address the issues?
I think we discussed it a lot yesterday and is ready for a vote. It is the one that says that state dollars from the road fund should be equally distributed throughout the non-incorporated areas. So therefore, if you're from an incorporated area, you do not get that you don't get put into that equal distribution. But if you're from anywhere else in the county, then you get an equal distribution of the road fund dollars. And that does not include, and we're talking about capital road fund dollars, not the repaving and things of that nature. So I think we talked about it for a long time yesterday and ready for a vote.
Yeah, well, now, I recall, sorry? 35. And I recall some of the discussion by Ms. Fowler, if I recall correctly, that there was some consideration or questions about the interplay between the funds that were addressed in number 35 and those that are addressed in Ms. Butler's item here, which is number 36. So I guess the question here is, how do those two things relate one to the other? For example, do the funds that are the funds made available under 36, which I gather the so-called road, what are they called?
We're talking about the road fund dollars?
Yes, road fund dollars. That road fund dollars, which go, I guess, to Metro and then to the small cities as well. What's the interplay between those dollars and the dollars and the other dollars that the capital fund dollars in terms of the how they come together to address the needs for road for actually making roads, repairing roads, improving roads? Do they relate one to another or not? They're all dollars focused on roads. Why shouldn't we address these two things together? That's my question.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
So I sent everybody the breakdown and look, this is before the redistricting. So we would have to get, the numbers and the breakdown of those specific districts. But I sent all of that to you. It came from Brian Powell. You should have it on your emails. I can ask him to print that out for those here in chambers, but it shows, how many miles of small cities are in the one I passed out to you all is probably not going to show what you need, but I don't know if you're able to go to your email, but I can also get Brian to print them out for those that are here in chambers. And then the others, those online can look on their emails.
Well, could you outline for us what the data shows and how it addresses the issue?
Yes,
we're talking?
so it shows the percentages of small city roads within each individual 26 district seats. And so we are allocated $100,000 normally for CIF funds for every year. And when there is 2/3 or more of a district that has small cities, that's just an inequity that I've been trying to fix for 5 years. So I thought this was a perfect opportunity to address it.
And how would we address it?
I'm sorry?
How would we address it?
Well, I'm assuming that, we figure out a way to make it equitable. I realize that there are some funds that are infrastructure funds that are used in parks. And so we would need to figure out a fair way to do that and, exclude a percentage. We could get an average of what has been spent over the years in parks from the CIF funds.
I'm afraid I don't know how to handle that because I don't understand the process, the problem or the process well. Please, Mr. Gentini.
Thank you. So my personal opinion is it's not germane to this question.
Which is not?
The whole question of CIF funding. CIF funding is not linked to roads specifically. It is capital improvement funding that you can use for any capital infrastructure needs in your district. It is something that Metro Council absolutely should take up, and I'm sure Councilwoman Fowler during the budget cycle will bring it up, right? That the city has to do. 67C does not mandate the whole process of CIF funding or NDF funding, which is non-capital district funding. That is not mandated, frankly, or even contemplated by state statute. It is something that Metro Council has politically decided to do over the last 20 years. So it's something that Metro Council politically would have to handle. I know that a lot of people, including Councilman Fowler, use that money for roads. That's fine. A lot of people don't. They just use them for general capital needs. So what we're saying in this proposal is we want state dollars to follow growth and infrastructure needs where population density is, which quite frankly includes Councilwoman Fowler's district. There's been a lot of growth down there. But that is a different debate than what to do with the CIF dollars. And quite frankly, I mean, and keeping in mind, I want to totally be clear about what I'm saying. Because if you look at this chart, I would get the first or the second most money because I have the most metro roads, according to this chart. Metro CTR, I have as I'm looking at it, second most roads, and Stuart Benson has the first. I have the second most state roads next to District 13. So, I mean, frankly, I would love to link that to road mileage because I'll win in spades. But the question here is not so much that political process that Metro needs to handle, and that would be an interesting debate because I'll juxtapose it to point out what Councilman Fowler is saying with District 7 that has 10 miles of roads versus 50 miles in Councilman Benson's district, city roads we're talking about, because District 7 has miles and miles of roads in suburban cities, right? And that's Councilwoman McCraney's district. So if we did this, but that is a political question that Metro Council has to handle. I don't see that linked to what we're talking here, because again, I want to drive home the CIF funding. Although many people use it for roads, that is true. It is not only used for roads, and I have been using it overwhelmingly for parks as an example. I'm not sure it's linked. It's something that the Metro Council certainly should address through our budget process. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Fowler, do you take that point?
Well, so I do take that point, but I also take the point that, it's nice that you're able to use your funds in the Parks Department or, in your parks within your district. That's great. I don't have that luxury because I don't have any small cities. Do you have small cities? You do. So you're getting a little bit bigger piece of the pie.
Once
I thought-
again,
If I understood the.
I will compare District 14, 14 metro roads, 24 miles. District 19, that's my district, metro roads, 33 miles. I have more roads than District 14 has, and I choose to use my money that way. It's not a matter of luxury, and Middletown is taken out of that. I'm not counting Middletown. Counting strictly city roads, I have more roads than District 14. But I use that money, choose to, for other things. Now, sometimes I've chosen to use it. I've used it recently for a traffic light. I choose to use it for different things. It's prioritized by district. But yes, I have suburban cities, and I still have more city roads than almost every other council person in this district, sans one, and that's Stuart Benson.
And I'm
Mr.
not, sure-
Chairman.
this discussion's interesting, but I'm not sure it's relevant to my recommendation. I don't think y'all should have discretionary funds at all, but you've got them, but that's not relevant. That's not relevant to this question, though. Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, and I appreciate the situation that Cindy is in her district. I also believe that the CIFs and the NDFs are totally different and separate from what we're trying to accomplish. I think what y'all, when I say y'all, I mean Metro Council. This is a internal discussion within Metro Council to try to figure out how to deviate all this up. This language that that Jason and I put forth is basically goes to the General Assembly that they will say, look, we are recommending, Metro government to go through and look at the distribution of these funds. In addition to that, we all agreed about the formula, it's a fifth, in terms of trying to allocate more money to that. So that's where the state can come into play and have more of a cooperative and collaborative approach from the state and local level. But I think what we're talking about is really two things. One is more of a Metro Council discussion to work it out. But this statement basically articulates, we say it should be evenly distributed. How y'all decided that, that's going to be Metro Council's decision.
Could I go back to the way I began this discussion? When Jason's, I said, we're talking about this issue here, which is the one that you and Mr. Nemes introduced. And I said, does it deal with the same issues as are addressed in Ms. Butler's one, which is the one that follows? And that also, if I understand correctly, deals with funds from the state. So my question was, and I'd like to repeat it, and that is, are we talking about how the state is to be allocating funds inside Jefferson County? And whether or not, for example, the notion of allocating the funds based on population, which is what you all are suggesting, should also be considered in the following recommendation in terms of whether or not the Metro ought to have a little more say-so on how the funds are distributed, the capital funds on state roads inside the county.
Well, I guess my first thought is that at least District 5 goes through each budget cycle to discuss issues and problems when it comes to safety concerns, whatever, with the state representatives and the senators. And I'm pretty sure, at least in the past, Metro Council members have been invited to that as well to discuss in a holistic way of what the issues and problems and challenges are when it comes to in terms of these. Look at the projects. You got a 6-year program or 6-year plan that the state goes through. That goes into that mix in terms of hearing what's going on in terms of what the issues are and so forth. So I think, and I'm trying to digest. You said, are these other capital? I guess the capital improvement projects, should that be commingled or reviewed in the same?
I didn't say commingled. I said the question is, should in the first funds, if I understand correctly, are within the discretion of are to be determined by this entity on where they're to be spent. And the only question here is, should they be spent with some regard to population?
I think we're just basically saying that the money should be spent fairly and equally across the whole county.
Well, I understand that.
Okay, then that's what our purpose is, and that's what it says, and that's all it is.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't want to.
trying, Ken, to see whether or not we can consolidate some of these recommendations so that they make sense as a single one, if that makes sense, so that to the extent we're addressing the same body, the legislature, and how road funds are to be spent, whether or not there's potential for making them consistent.
Could you point,
If that's not possible, then it isn't.
Chairman, what,
So-
could you point to what you're referring to? When you
I'm
said the
referring-
one next to it?
I'm referring to number 36.
Okay.
Has to do with,
Because I look at a 38, okay, you said the next one, it's like 38. So, okay, gotcha. When it looks, when I read that,
if I understood correctly, you all are addressing 35. And so I'm referring then to the one that follows, which is 36. I'm talking from the sheet we used yesterday, which has numbers to it.
We have an extra.
Now, I'll give you.
I thought you're talking about 37, because that's what Mr. Nemus came up with and talking about evenly distributed capital projects. That's what we're talking about. If I'm wrong, let me know and I'll, 37? I know, so I don't know what the chairman's coming from in terms of 35, 30.
I actually called 35 to be discussed. So I assume that's what you were talking about.
No, that's that, well, we're talking about 37. That's,
Okay,
The confusion is,
go ahead.
is me. I think we know what we're talking about. I think because I didn't have the number on here, I went to the one that we left off on yesterday, and I think that's 37. That's 37. And Co-Chair Jones was looking at 35. So I'm the source of that confusion. We're looking at
so
37.
you went back to 35.
I think the capital improvement for state projects was 37. That was my understanding. I may be wrong.
I think isn't it in 36? Just,
Well, the one that I'm talking about reads, it's one sentence. It says, the commission recommends that funds received from the commission recommends that funds received from the state government for road and transportation capital improvements should be fairly distributed across the county's unincorporated areas based on population and economic development, period. That's it. Shelby?
If we, based on Representative Fleming's comments, if we're looking at reviewing the way that it is distributed and making that fair, is there a way that we could drop the specificity of population and economic development in the sentence and just say review the way that these funds are distributed?
We can do that, but I think we gotta recognize, in terms of the shift of population and the economic development. Economic development can play, both out in the county, but also in downtown. The population is definitely obvious that the population has definitely shifted out into the county. So I appreciate your suggestion, but I think it's probably best to have those in the statement to make sure that they're looking at both of those components.
If it would get you to a yes, Shelby, I think I can get Ken to agree to say this. Fairly distributed across the county's unincorporated areas with an eye toward population and economic development. So it's not necessarily based on those alone, but we're going ahead and saying those are our values.
Or recognizing population?
Does that get you to a yes?
That's fine.
Yeah.
Is that okay for you, Representative Flang? Okay.
this is a recommendation to whom?
The General Assembly.
Now, if we can go back to 36, proposition there is that Metro should have more say-so in the way the capital funds, in the way the microphones, in the way that the capital funds are spent. Thank you. The clerk reminds me, we did not vote on 37, so let's call the roll.
Jason Demus.
Yes.
Earl Jones.
Present.
Gerald Neal. Julie Rocky Adams.
Yes.
Mike Nemus.
Yes.
Ken Fleming.
Yes.
Pamela Stevenson. Anthony Piagentini. Ja'Cory Arthur. Cindy Fowler.
Yes.
Marianne Butler. Shelby Williams Somerville.
Yes.
Scott Schoenberger.
Yes.
Bonnie Young.
Yes.
And Sean Drysback.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 11 yes votes and 1 present vote.
Thank you. Okay, so back on 36, this one, if I understand it correctly, is an effort to provide more oversight or more control, I guess, of capital funds to state roads being spent, dollars being spent on state roads inside Jefferson County. Now, this is directed to Public Works. It says fund the Department of Public Works. I take that to be some kind of instruction or request that the dollars that come from the state for the funding of public works as they relate to state projects or road projects on state roads, that those be more within the control of Metro Public Works to determine where those funds should be dispersed, what projects should be spent. You recall that we had some discussion earlier of the fact that District 5 was very short of people and that projects were delayed in getting implemented, and that often, as a result of that delay, by the time they are able to be implemented, the cost of the projects has significantly increased. And therefore, the dollars available for general capital road projects in the county are less than they were originally intended to be. That's my understanding of the issue.
I have found that we have a pretty good assessment both by the state and the local authorities, and so I'm going to vote no on this.
I'd like to add, the only thing I could maybe add a little juice to this is that, and I have to believe this happens, is that the Public Works Department, even though they have a fairly, what I remember back in the day, they have a pretty good assessment process. May not cover everything, which I think Marianne Butler might be coming from, but maybe they can draw upon the State Department to help to collaborate their different processes to assess the roads and look at different needs and so forth. So that's something I'm thinking of, is having something like that in there to work with the state. Other than that, I think they do a pretty good job in going through, and making the assessments.
I don't think it was, I didn't understand it was a question of assessment. I thought it was a question of, yes, they're agreeing maybe on what the projects are. It was a question of determining when they might be implemented or who's going to pull the trigger to get them done.
Earl, I can barely hear you. You said something about implementing. I can barely hear you.
Yep, sorry, guys. I said, as I was saying, I didn't think it was a question of assessing. When you say assessment, I assume you mean assessing the condition of the road and whether it needs to be repaired or something?
The assessments basically go through a rating scale to look at the conditions of a road as well as, basically the condition of roads. You could look at new roads, but it's mainly conditions of roads and safety issues.
Right. I did not understand that this was addressing that. I thought it had to do with the projects that in effect were agreed upon, but that the issue was that they couldn't be implemented because District 5's people don't have the resources or the time to actually look, unless these things are identified as what they are, I really can't deal with them.
Who keeps giving us these documents? They're not identified. I don't know what they are. Okay. All right, you're going to speak to them? Okay. Go ahead, Ken.
Or you're talking about the planning process in terms of what needs to
I
be,
understood it was the spending process. Once the dollars are allocated, it's a question of when they get spent.
when they get spent.
And we have a 6-year road plan. I don't,
State has a 6-year road plan, but that's revolving chairs. I mean, I've had, gosh, there's Dr. DeWeese, my predecessor. He's had a project on there for when he was alive, and that's going back 10 years. So, it's a, you know, it's just a matter of, you know, when it can be moved to the 2-year plan and so forth. So it's very, very fluid about that. I don't know if the Metro Council Public Works has anything like that. I have their 6-year plan or 4-year plan or what?
Okay, well, look, okay, let's pass it then. I obviously don't have the right information. It was just my understanding that it really had to do with the question of that the state doesn't have the right personnel in Jefferson County to be able to approve the road plan and to get it moving. And therefore, by the time these projects do get implemented, the cost has escalated significantly. But fine, let's just move on. Yes.
I'm sorry. Just in reading the document, and again, I think the compliments are great. I think the whole point is the last sentence, which is to expand the current assessment process to include, to broaden that out on other infrastructure requirements or needs that the metro government's responsible for. So I'm just reading it because Marion's not here to speak about it, but it's to include sidewalks, alleys, guardrails, bridges, lights, signs, and markings, which it sounds to me as if right now that is not part of the assessment. I would defer to one of the council members that are here. I mean, I did learn about, you know, how they rate the streets. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Piagentini.
So these are very different things. Alleys are similar to roads. So alleys and roads are assessed in the same way, very comprehensive. The city actually does a really bang up job of mathematically assessing that. So that's alleys and roads. Sidewalks are done rather poorly. We've been behind on sidewalks. It's a complaint-based system and it's really a ridiculous way that we've done it historically. I would say that the city's been trying to catch up on that, call it the last 2 years, but sidewalks is not done in a sort of thoughtful, proactive way. Bridges, we just threw a bunch of money at bridges that are run locally, which, you know, again, you have local, state, federal, right? But they're local. Lighting is done depending on jurisdiction. USD does lighting, or if you're outside the USD, others do lighting. And then signs and markings is a whole nother department. So it's not as comprehensive. I will say the way it's currently written, I'd probably be a no on it just because, and I wish Ms. Butler was here to talk about this, but the way it's written, the Department of Public Works is our department. That's the local department. To some degree, we do this. I'm not saying we're perfect at it. We could do better, right, as far as the city is concerned. But most of this is done fairly well, with sidewalks being the obvious exception, okay, in my opinion. The state does a much better job. Frankly, the state does, I would border around and say, an outstanding job of planning for what needs to be done. My beef with the state is always execution, right? The process that the state has to go through related to funding and then et cetera, et cetera. And I have a boat ton of state roads in my district. So I've been living through this where I've got projects funded 12 years ago and we haven't moved a spoonful of dirt yet, right? So, but that is a state procedural problem, not a planning problem. So I'm not sure of what problem this is particularly addressing. We have some great plans on what needs to be fixed. It's mostly a funding and execution issue. But again, that's one man's opinion, but hopefully I clarified at least how the city does some of the things that were referred to down here. Some things we do really well. Again, I would say sidewalks we do poorly. We're trying to catch up, but it's not a very good process.
And I just want to add that there is an agreement between the state and the county in order to take care of the roads to mowing, to snow removal, all those sorts of things. So I think I guess things are established between those two groups So anyway, I think we can move on, or we can vote on this.
Okay. Thanks. Then let's move on then to number 38. Which one? Well, I don't think we really have enough information on it, frankly. Yes. So number 38, let's see what it says.
Chapter 75.
Yes. Right. This is the one on fire, I guess the authority of fire districts.
This would lead to raising taxes on residents in Chapter 75 districts. I will vote no against this very strongly.
And why would it do that?
Well, because it says update Chapter 75 to allow them to tax differently. That's just political speak for give them a chance to raise taxes. So right now they can levy 10 cents per $100. That should not be increased.
I just want to throw in, we are talking about, when you look at this, we're looking for the whole state. And I think this is not going to go, to be honest with you, I don't think it's going to go anywhere in the state. I mean, you can put this in here, but it's not going to go anywhere. And I think, what Jason said, I think it is open up a pretty big door in terms of looking at the possibility of increasing taxes. But I think this is not going to go anywhere. I can tell you that right now.
And I would note that all except for one fire protection district in Jefferson County, Fairdale and Chively also do EMS, and only one of them charges the full 20 cents. If you do fire only, you can go up to 10 cents. If you do EMS, you can go up to 20 cents, an additional 10 cents. Only one of them has done the full 20 cents. So it doesn't appear to me that it's even necessary, but.
Right. And so what you're saying that there's a possibility that they can go ahead and do it now because there is a margin up to 20. Some at 16, you can go up to 20.
Except for one of them. I don't remember which one that is. I
Well,
think
yeah,
it
no,
might be
but for
PRP.
most of them, they have a latitude of going up.
That's right.
Okay, so let's, you want to call? I do have an issue, by the way, on the question of the fire people, the fire districts rather. And that is that we have discussed from time to time, and as I recall, it was an issue that was brought up in the questioning of, I think the witness was the current, he was either the chairman or he was the chief of St. Matthews, on the question of how their rates are set, the decisions regarding rates, and how they are managed. And my recollection is that there was some concern or comments expressed by the commissioners, some of the commissioners, that the process by which they determine what their rates shall be is not very transparent, and that the process for electing their boards who make these decisions is not very well publicized or well attended. And I think that's an issue that the commission should address. As you all may recall from one of the charts that Dr. Coombs presented, where he compared the taxes paid inside the USD, where based on property, and then that was compared to property taxes assessed in the small cities as well as in the small cities together, then also with the rates charged by the fire districts, that in a majority of the cases, the total tax burden on property exceeded that of the USD. It's my understanding that those residents may see those bills, but may not have a great sense of how they're arrived at, who actually makes those decisions, and what their ability is to have input into those decisions. I would think that we should, as a commission, recommend, given the fact that we're talking about the governance of the consolidated government, of which these fire districts are a part, that we should urge the legislature to provide for more transparency. My suggestion for that would be that the election of those boards be done in a much more public fashion, and that those elections occur on the same schedule and on the same ballot as the general elections that occur in the county. And I'd like your all's reaction to that, given the problems that are identified. Now, I've got some data here that Dr. Coombs provided to us, showing what both the rates for these districts as well as their total receipts, which of course are very significant, ranging up to almost $20 million per year for some. So the idea that we have bodies with that taxing ability and revenues of that size, with less visibility and transparency than some of the municipalities in this county, I think requires somebody to address.
Tony?
Couldn't agree more. I think, look, as somebody in Middletown Anchorage Fire District, love all those folks, get along with the chief and everybody. It blows my mind the way that those elections are done. And I see no logical reason why they shouldn't be aligned with the typical election cycle and those names be on the ballot. So it's because right now it's basically like an ad in the paper and a few people show up and, they get on the board and they have taxing authority. So I like the transparency aspect of this and I like the way we're going about it, which is to recommend that they be on the regular cycle and they be on a regular standard ballot. So.
Yeah, I want to comment on it if I could. I think it's, I think we actually have, I don't know if anybody online wants to have a comment or not. Sean or Julie?
I do. Yes, I do. I have a comment. I want to comment on Chairman Jones's questions he brought up. One of them was about the fixed rates. I think the fixed rates that you're referring to that Colonel Reardon from St. Matthews brought up was about Medicaid and Medicare. We don't have any control over the billing of Medicaid and Medicare patients. That is a set rate, far below the national recognized rate that we have for a BLS, a basic life support run, or an advanced life support run. So it's far below that. They are set, and we don't have any control over those rates. As for the tax rates, that this particular, I think, recommendation was about restructuring the tax structure for the fire districts. Chairman Nemus is correct. About 10 cents for fire, 10 cents for EMS. All the fire districts, with the exception of Fairdale, do have EMS, so we're able to tax up to 20 cents. Pleasures Park is the only fire district at this point that is at 20 cents. The rest of us are below that. As you well know, our budgets are pretty fixed. Remember, our budgets are, there's no general fund that we could go back to. What we have is what we have to spend. So most of our budgets are anywhere between 80 to 90% for personnel. And again, a typical fire truck could cost anywhere between $1 million to $2 million. So that is a very high amount it costs to buy new equipment, as well as to keep our equipment running, as well as paying for our personnel. As for the elections, I think the fire districts will be fine with the way of recommending those elections being on a general ballot that you would have in November. And I think the Department of Elections, though, was the ones that were against it because our fire district boundaries do not line up with any other election boundaries around. And they found it to be practically impossible to put those names on a ballot at different polls during the general elections. So I think, I don't think it's the fire districts you're going to find a problem with that. I think it's going to be the Department of Elections that's going to have an issue with putting those on a ballot for your particular home where you live in that particular fire district of the polling place that you're going to vote at. So I hope that answers some of your questions regarding these things. If there's any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
John, can I ask you a question? This is Ken. The boundaries of the fire districts, what do they overlap? Do they overlap precincts? Do they overlap cities? how they overlap it?
I think all the above. Ken, to be honest with you, like my fire district, even though I have the word Jeffersontown on it, I cover 40 square miles, and the city of Jeffersontown is approximately 10. So and I actually have six different cities within my jurisdiction. Just like St. Matthews, I think they have like 20 some odd small cities in their particular fire district. So the boundaries just, I don't think there's any boundaries like the fire districts that they overlap so many other areas of the unincorporated as well as incorporated areas of the city.
Okay, although I have not looked at the actual overlay of the suburban fire districts with the precincts, but the common denominator that I find is precincts. Obviously, get down lower that the census. It's a census tracts. I mean blocks. But anyway, but I suspect that the precincts will line, I would say, pretty much true to the fire districts. And so in doing that,
There are a number of precincts, like,
What?
there are a number of precincts in Middletown, which would have Sean's district, fire district, and would have Middletown's fire district. So there are a number of precincts that are split. They're probably not tons, but they do exist.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Hold on, let's let Ken finish and then you come to you.
well, it's a point to it. It's an additional point of context. And as an additional point of context, none of the Metro Council districts were required to follow precinct lines. I can cite at least one that I know of that literally the entire border cut precincts. So Metro Council doesn't give a rat's patootie about precincts. So I don't see that as being a rate limiting factor on building the maps. It makes the job of our county clerk infinitely more difficult. But I just want to make clear that I realize what people are saying about precincts. That has not stopped other jurisdictions, including Metro Council, from cutting them and still being able to fulfill those balance.
That's right, and you're right, Tony. That's right. I mean, there is a process to go through to split the districts. You get up to a certain level, they split, just because of volume and so forth. I mean, what I'm saying is that I believe it can be done. It will be some effort on the election office to go through and delineate who's where and who should vote, but I think it can be done. So that's.
So we've got are you done, Ken? Sorry.
No, and I think what Earl brought up is a good suggestion, and I think I'd support it.
So we have Chief Driesbach that's in support of this conceptually. I know about 6 years ago, Senator Matt Caslin, when he was a representative, had a bill on this. It didn't move, but I've always found my fire protection district in Middletown, Anchorage, to be very open and transparent, and so they have always been very good. I don't talk with the other ones nearly as much, and so, but because of the numbers that go through there, and that their elections are, I think, in June, but they're certainly in the summer. I do think it would bring more respect and transparency to the process. The citizens would have more of a confidence in it. So I think we should move forward and support Chairman Jones's recommendation. I know we need to get some language on it because it's not in writing right now, but I think the recommendation is, Mr. Chairman, if I could, the recommendation is to bring more transparency to the process by having elections for Chapter 75 fire protection boards on the same schedule as general elections in Kentucky. Okay.
Just to add to that, keep in mind, there's only 2 members on the 7-member board that are elected by property owners, only 2.
Yeah, the rest are appointed, and that was part of Matt Caslin's bill as well. But I'll also note that Chapter 75 is a statewide thing, not just Jefferson County. Cindy?
That's correct.
Yes, I'm just a little concerned over what Chief Driesbach said about the county clerk. And there was a lot going on when he was talking about that in chambers. And I'm just not sure how we're going to make that align.
Well, that's what she's elected to do, and I assume she'll do it.
Okay.
And again,
Well, keep in mind, it just doesn't affect our county clerk. It affects all the Chapter 75
Yes.
county clerks statewide. And there's, I think, last I remember, I think it's close to 100 different Chapter 75 fire districts throughout. Well, probably less than that since a lot of them have merged. But there's a lot more than just the ones here that you've seen on a regular
Certainly.
basis.
Understood. But again, I think we all understand that statute was created back how long ago? When these were mostly volunteer fire departments. And
1944.
over the years, they've of course gotten larger and assumed more responsibilities and therefore been given more substantial taxing authority. But that's where they started. And I think that's, conceptually, the way they still have been managed, or at least the legislature has not maybe looked at them again as it maybe should have.
I would note, Earl, that in some areas, they are still voluntary driven. In Louisville, they're not. But in some areas, they are. Tony?
Again, I just want to reiterate, Metro Council themselves, and I voted against the Metro Council map, to be quite clear, because of how many precincts were split and how much gerrymandering was going on in a few districts. But Metro Council split precincts all over God's green earth, all across this county, not for what Representative Fleming talked about. I actually have a precinct that's gotten so bloody huge, and so many people have moved into it, that it does need to be broken up. It has hit that threshold. That's not why we sliced it. We sliced precincts strictly for political reasons, literally slicing it because there were apartments on one side and single-family homes on the other side.
Well, that's not what we're talking about here.
No, but but all I'm saying is,
That's every 10 years, though.
agreed, but my point is Metro Council has put this burden on the county clerk, and the county clerk has figured it out. So
Okay,
I'm just saying,
so
the clerk has the ability to.
We're gonna move forward. I'm gonna say the House didn't split a single precinct in the entire state. Cindy?
Okay. So I would just like to say that the KRS, Chapter 75, has not been updated. And it has nothing to do with taxing in my book. It has to do with what's fair. And I would just like to see them revisit and look at that and see if there's any antiquated measures that need to be, not measures, but any clauses that need to be revised. I mean, seriously, 75 years.
Well, I guess the motion that's on the floor now is focusing on the transparency question. Are you proposing to amend, to a further amendment?
I would just like to add to it if we can amend it, then if that's up to him whether he will accept that amendment. But I just think that it would be a good idea to just look over that chapter and see if there's anything that, would be beneficial to our fire districts.
Okay, I must say I'm a little concerned only because of the issue that was raised, the comment that was made a little earlier about increasing the authority for taxes.
And I'm not talking about taxes. And that's not what I'm talking about. So, I mean, to Chief Driesbach's point, the cost of, everything has gone up, but, a fire engine, the cost of a fire engine is just astronomical. So, but I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about revisit 75, look at it and see whether there's things that need to be updated.
Unless somebody in the commission is going to say what those suggestions would be, I can't support that, Ms. Fowler, mainly because I don't know, that's carte blanche to anybody and everybody who's got a bone to pick or a chicken to pluck.
So, Mr. Chairman, I second your motion, and I think we should vote on it. I would also note that I know a number of us have said, and I probably also said it, Chapter 75, it's very old. It's been amended at least a dozen times. So most recently in 2016. So it's not like it was passed 75 years ago and it left on the books. I make a motion that we vote. Well, I've got one, also as recently as 2023. I think we should vote on your motion.
Fowler, are you okay with that? Please call the roll.
Jason Nemeth.
Hold on, we have a question. What is your motion?
Sorry. Motion is as articulated by the co-chair that, you want to restate it, Jason?
Sure. So the motion is, I can tell you the reasons for it, all that, the reasons, obviously. The motion is that this commission recommends to bring more transparency to the process by having an election for the Chapter 75 fire protection districts on the same schedule as general elections. Right now, they're elected in June. This would make them elected in November. And I think a testimony that we had from Coombs was, I don't know if Paul's still on there, but it was something like 3% is a good election turnout. So for these.
Is that what you were looking for, Senator?
Gerald, does that answer your question?
Jason Nemus.
Yes.
Earl Jones.
Yes.
Gerald Neal. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Did you say? Want me to come back? Okay, so I don't mean to rush you, so don't let me, okay? Julie Rocky Adams.
Yes.
Good. Mike Nemus,
Yes.
Ken Fleming,
Yes.
Pamela Stevenson, Anthony Piagentini, Ja'Cory Arthur, Cindy Fowler, Marianne Butler, Shelby Williams Somerville,
Present.
Scott Schoenberger,
Yes.
Bonnie Young,
Yes.
Sean Dreisbach,
Yes.
Gerald Neal. Mr. Chair, you have 9 yes votes and 3 present votes.
Thank you.
We're on the last one.
Okay, we're going to please now consider item number 39, which is the last item. And let's just read the damn thing. Now, I think this one addresses the question of staffing.
For KIPTA.
Yes. This may get more to the point that I was raising earlier, Senator Fleming, Representative Fleming, in terms of.
Don't demote him to the Senate.
Very good. The delays in various projects caused by the shortage of staff. I don't know whether anybody here has got any particular familiarity with this, other than what's on the document. I don't know whether the council members themselves, for example, might have more information about this. Maybe some of the state legislators do as well. I don't know.
If we're going to pass this, I think we should drop.
I may have an opinion.
Was that?
If we're going to pass this, we need to drop District 5 in our reference for obvious reasons.
Yes.
The eyes we're looking at or putting this in front of is the legislature, which will have their own districts. I would also note, and I know Tony's eager to jump up and down and say how much he supports this, but we have staffing problems everywhere. This would be tying the governor's and the General Assembly's hands. It's okay because they are understaffed. We need more staffing here, but give me an agency and I'll tell you I'll show you a staffing problem. So we should have it across the board, not just here. But if we want to pass this, it's certainly true that KIPTA needs more staffing.
Yeah.
And they do a great job.
So I'm not going to object to making it all, it's to be magnanimous to all districts. With that said, I mean, I can testify that, and the people that are there are working hard. That's not the question. It's just, you can't get them on the phone, the delays on these projects. But to Representative Nemus's point, we're having this problem in every department or many departments in the city too. So, but, if there's anything that can be done, for example, in public safety, we have instituted a series of efforts and funded them immensely to try to solve the problem. And really, I think that's maybe just what we're saying. If the state can focus on a few areas to really focus on the workforce problem here would be great for the city. But thank you.
I agree with the KIPTA part. I have horror stories of Blankenbaker where my city pays about $60,000 a year to maintain the state road of Blankenbaker. And Public Works now is going to cut it about 5 times a year, but they don't tell me when they're going to cut it. So I might be cutting the road on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then the state shows up on Thursday and it's already been cut. So more staffing. Everybody needs more staffing. I don't know what we can do about it, but the process of trying to get some sort of schedule out of anybody as to what we're going to do is a real problem. So
Can I speak to that? I'm not sure. The state would be the ones that would be cutting Blankenbaker up until the last cut, which is done by Metro Public Works.
Nicole George gave me a list of 5 cuttings per public works to be done on Blankenbaker.
Is Blankenbaker a state highway?
It's a state highway. And I pay $60,000 a year to cut it myself once a month or twice a month. And I get no reimbursement from state. I get no reimbursement from Metro. I get no reimbursement from anybody. I got a sound wall that's about to fall in and it's crumbling on one end. I don't want anybody to get hurt, but it wouldn't bother me if it fell in the middle of Blankenbaker. At least I would know it's going to get fixed because my city has no money to fix it. And it is a sound wall in Blankenbaker.
I still don't know why Metro would be reimbursing you anyway. It would be, the state should be.
Well, I agree with that.
It's a
but
state highway.
I don't need to be
So-
paying them much. I agree. Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, the second paragraph in this one is about the cutting. And what's it been? Probably 8 years ago, they quit cutting. I think they tried to go 2 cuttings a season. I may be wrong. That sounds about right. Ken, you might remember. Where the state cut back on their cuttings, and then the Johnson grass went out of control and got a stronghold, and then we ended up starting to pay to have that.
Yeah, that's like 2008, 2009.
Right.
Been a long time.
Well, at any rate, it was a bad choice because now we've got areas that if you let it grow 2 weeks, it's 6 foot tall because the Johnson grass grows that way. And, I just think that they should be cutting it more often. And Metro shouldn't have to chip in to take care of that cut.
Other than, I think Representative Nemus said about taking out the term District 5. Is that right? Which I
Yes.
would support, of course.
Right, so we're talking about, is it, so what's the phrase, all districts or just KYTC districts? What's the appropriate language change?
I think put a period, delete, comma, and then District 5, and then the period will be right after KYTC, and then that's the only change.
Okay, got it.
So will this mean that KYTC is going to be cutting 4 times a year?
I don't think it's what it means. I think it means that we're trying to get them, it's the second paragraph, right?
Yep.
It means that's what we're going to try to get them to do. That's the
Okay.
recommendation of the commission.
Solidify the language to where it is what we are recommending they do?
I guess this is a funding recommendation?
I think what the recommendation is that KYTC should understand that this is their responsibility to cut. And that it's not Metro's responsibility because it's a state area, right?
Right.
Right, but I don't think
They
it,
only cut 3 times a year. If they do that only 3 times a year, then the grass is 6 foot tall
of course,
because.
and that's, I suppose that's why Metro does it one extra time. So this is saying, look, it's your responsibility. Metro shouldn't be supplementing it.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it says. I don't know how many times is the right amount of time to cut, but 4 sounds fine to me. I don't know.
I just would like for it to read that's the way it should be instead of wishy-washy maybe.
So why 4? I mean, why not?
I don't know, we could do 5, but I don't think they
I
do
don't know. I
that.
don't know if 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know what's right.
Why don't we just say as needed?
Why is it needed?
No,
As needed.
As needed.
And as needed won't work. I mean, it needs to be 5 times a year or 4 times a year because Metro pays for the 4th cut. And We shouldn't have to do that. Well, we could do, but
There's no real foundation on which to make an assessment what the proper number of cuts be. We just know that it's not adequate, and therefore Metro steps in, and that's not adequate, and it becomes a funding piece. And primarily it's the state's obligation, the state's highway, for instance. So it looks to me like it needs to be evaluated with an assessment toward providing adequate cutting schedule in urban areas, or taking in consideration the urban versus rural, how that works. Something of that nature seems more, because we really don't know.
I wonder, Gerald, if we can say at least 4 times per year. I don't know. I don't know what the right number is, but if it rains a lot, it might be more. If it rains less, it might be less.
That's what I'm saying. Why should they not make an assessment? We're only making a recommendation.
Right. That's right.
Well, let me ask this question. The number is 3. How does it get to be 3? Is that their guideline or some
used to
future?
be 5. And they cut it down to 3, and then we made up the difference with the 4th cut. But, it really didn't make it.
Well,
gets
was
out
the
of hand.
5 number the state's number? That's
It
what they
was,
determined
it
what-
was a long time ago.
Then I say at least 5 and let it go at that.
It's just a recommendation anyway. DOT is going to make the decision.
Arbitrary.
Well, no, it's just simply going back to what they had done before.
I don't know
It's
that.
arbitrary.
We've done is arbitrary.
It doesn't mean it's adequate.
I agree.
It just means what we did before.
But I guess the
I
concern,
hear your point. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm afraid, I guess the point may be that if it's a recommendation to do the assessment won't take place, and the assessment may say 2. I mean, just pushing a point.
Well, I mean, if it's a state issue and we are making a recommendation to take action, and there are legislators that feed into that particular piece, then I don't see, it happens or it doesn't happen. That's the process we deal in. I'm just saying that it needs to be addressed, and I think it's arbitrary.
In the House, Ken is the guy that we rely on budget issues in the House. So Ken, what do you think? I'm going with what our budget guy in the House thinks.
Be quite blunt, we can put in 10 and they'll probably just still do 3 because they're tight on money and this is not a high priority. We've conciliated many times before, as Cindy knows. And I remember Kevin Kramer has preached time in and time out about line of sight. When you come out, you can't see and it needs to be cut.
But that
I
being
just don't
said,
think,
I'd
I
like
just
at
don't,
least 5.
we can put in 5 there, but it's going to be 3. I mean, they don't have the money. I mean, that's a low priority for them.
So everything that we have done during this whole time, if it has to do with money, it's going to be whether or not somebody decides they want to do it. I mean, so we have just for months been doing all of this work and it's all arbitrary.
No, we're looking at part of it's funding, but part of it's policy.
I don't think, so if the legislature says, to answer your question about the funding issues, if the legislature says, if you don't get a service, you don't have to pay for it, that's going to be a law. That's pretty clear. But here, what's the legislature supposed to do? Put in KRS that you're going to mow 7 times a year on an even? What about, that doesn't take into account for rain, that doesn't take into account for a lot of different things. That's not the kind of thing that we put in statutes. So I think this is different in kind than what we've done with the
Why don't
rest
we
of it.
just leave it at 3 and do nothing? That's
I go back to my assessment piece. It's okay. Take it.
Okay, guys, I think
As needed.
we're obviously not going to come to agreement on what the language should be, apparently. So I think we should just vote on what's here, and it either rises or falls.
I think this is woefully inadequate.
I'm sorry?
I think this is woefully inadequate. For such a body of ours that's trying to inspire change, I think we should have something that at least makes them assess whether it's adequate or as needed even, at least makes the point.
So Senator, you're saying we should do what's right here, as you've described it, even if on a practical basis, some of the members present here are telling us.
That is
That is a
correct.
practical matter.
That's correct. What we saying is what,
So what sentence do you want to add, Gerald?
I think they ought to assess the appropriate number of mowing cycles or whatever that is, to address, appropriate number of cuts in, urban versus rural areas.
Well, to assess and then to execute or to perform.
Right, but keep in mind, oh, he's exactly right, you know, so what we're really doing is trying to encourage them to address the issue. But at the end of the day, we know as a realistic.
Can we say that at least they take care of that fourth cut instead of Metro doing it?
I mean, we can say it. Look, it's too much time on this.
I think it'd be easier to get 4 cuts than 5. I mean, you know we need 4 cuts. That's just historical.
All right, I got it. Let me make a suggestion along the lines of what you two are saying, so we can move. And I think handle your two suggestions. So we're going to delete District 5. We've all agreed to that. At the very end, add this sentence: KYTC should assess the appropriate number of mowing cycles, at least 4, and understand this is a state function to be performed by the state, not Metro government.
Okay, that works.
Okay, let's vote. Or did you have your hand up? Okay, let's vote.
Jason Nemus,
Yes.
149 radio, we're gonna be clear from
We got a second. Gerald seconded.
That's a,
Earl Jones,
Yes.
Gerald Neal,
yes.
Julie Rocky Adams,
Yes.
Mike Nemus,
I'm pro tem.
Yes.
Ken Fleming,
Yep.
Pamela Stevenson, Anthony Piagentini, Corey Arthur, Cindy Fowler,
Yes.
Marianne Butler, Shelby Williams Somervall,
Yes.
Scott Schoenberger,
Yes.
Bonnie Young,
Yes.
Sean Dreisbach.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 12 yes votes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
Councilwoman Fowler has given us some documents she'd like to address.
Yes.
So the last one that was handed to you has a 2, a number 2 at the bottom. This is what it would look like if Metro government or Metro councils districts were set up road miles as opposed to the way it is now. So if this takes into account the small cities in each district and how much more money. So to your point, Councilman Piagentini, you would get 148,000 as opposed to the 100,000 because you have more road miles. I'm sorry?
Microphone, please.
It says number 2 at the bottom. You see a number 2 at the bottom of the page?
And then it says 2.6 million. Is that what we're looking at the very bottom?
Yep. Yeah, it adds up to the $26 million or $1,000. No, 2 points. Yeah, you're right. 100,000 apiece.
Are we sure this isn't sidewalks?
I'm positive.
And I'm confused because we do 30 million on roads. We do 2.6 million on sidewalks.
I'm talking about CI funds that we get annually.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was
It's
confused.
okay.
Yep.
But anyway, you know, this is something that needs to be addressed. It's needed to be addressed for a number of years. And I don't see any reason not to do it now if we can. I mean,
Again, I'm not disputing. This is an interesting debate for our budget cycle. Zero dispute with that. I just want to be super clear. My point is twofold. What you'd really be saying is creating 3 funds. One that is dedicated strictly to road funding. CIF funding is not predicated on road funding or road miles. So if you wanted one that was predicated on that gave each council member X amount of dollars predicated on road dollars, I think that's an interesting debate. But CIF funding was not predicated on road miles because I use it for sidewalks. I use it for, again, parks.
Right.
I've used it for other infrastructure. So, and
But it is paving and sidewalks. It doesn't have infrastructure for other things such as lights or walking paths and parks. That's not in this paper,
Well-
okay? But we need to figure out how to do that to whether we get an average of each district and figure that in.
let me put it this way. My problem with including that in any of these recommendations are right now, the state has no jurisdiction over that. They give us budgeting authority. We have decided to create that rate. As you just heard, I forget it was Representative Nemus,
Yeah.
who I respect very much.
Might
We
make
used
a
to have much
recommendation.
overlap. He would be against it. I am not against it. I want to keep the authority at the city. I think if we were to even hint in this document that we are letting the state weigh in on whether or not we do these district-specific funds, they would go to zero because the state doesn't do it. So I mean, I'm just being totally transparent here. I was trying to avoid this conversation because I don't want the state weighing in on whether or not we should continue doing it, because I think we would lose that battle and they would get rid of
You would.
that council-specific funding.
You voted for the state to weigh in on all these other issues. What's the problem?
Because now we are talking about a federalist question, right? What is the separation of, no, you're exactly right. The question is, what is the separation of powers and what is the jurisdictions that each one of these groups have? And I don't want that level of jurisdictional control over our budgeting process. There are other things. What we largely discussed here are the things that are already established in 67C that the state has already established control over. You haven't established control over that.
I think we've argued about undermining all kinds of stuff, laying the predicate for possibly changing all kinds of things. A lot that I disagree with, you know. I'm just raising the irony of it. I don't
A lot of problems we have to fix that have been generated over the last 20 years, Gerald.
It's,
And this isn't one of them.
Senator, it's this far, but no further. So was there? I think that there's no motion on the floor. Okay, so I think we've finished going through all the items. I think the next job is, as we discussed earlier, we'll take a crack at sort of rewording some of the things we've now agreed upon what the wording was, but as to those which are conceptual only, without final words, we'll work on those between now and the 15th. We should probably try to figure out a date, Jason, by which we would distribute, let's say, the language out to the rest of the commissioners.
That's on you and me. So what, try to do it no later than,
3 days for review.
try to do it no later than noon on the 13th. So
What day of the week is that?
that's
That's just
Wednesday.
2 days, sir.
That's 3 days. What's Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday? 48 hours. Well, we have to have time to write them, Gerald.
So can we get agreement on the 13th?
And if we can, we'll get them quicker.
If we get them on the 12th, we will.
We'll try our best
How
to,
about by noon on the 13th?
and we're gonna make every effort to get them earlier.
Yeah. The 11th is my birthday, by the way, so I should be saying I'm not working my birthday. But
I
yes,
have a Supreme Court brief due that day, and you know what that means. I've got a brief at the Supreme Court due that day, and you know what that means. I'll be up till writing that brief. You always tell yourself it's gonna take a few hours, 12 hours later. Which I'm almost done with, but
okay. Thank you all.
okay.
More to come.
So next Friday, 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock? We probably need to make it 2 o'clock.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, next Friday at 2 o'clock. The 15th. Oh, he can't get here until 3 o'clock. So I think we will have a lot of his comments back, I think. If there's anything that he objects to, I'll ask him, I'll call him the night before. We'll hold that till he gets here. at all? Okay. All right. So if there's anything that you guys, when you, if you're not able to make it on Friday, this is for everybody, but it's obviously particularly the two who just said they couldn't make it. If you're not able to make it on Friday, please review the documents and then get your comments to Earl and me before the meeting on Friday. Well, I mean, we voted on all the concepts, so I think what we'll be doing is changing around, moving around commas and so forth. To the extent that we have dispute, we'll vote, but I don't know that we need to re-vote on the concepts. What? I'm not sure I want to cede that authority to my co-chair friend.
Look, my assumption is that the report is only going to be, the commission recommends this, commission recommends that, but it's not going to be a narrative of any kind. It's just going to be these particular recommendations.
Right. Second.
Okay.
Hey.
Okay.
Screwing up the old metro.
That's right. That's right.
Mr. Jones. Earl.
Yeah. Fine. Let's check with my co-chair first. I'm not doing this alone. If he's not willing, we're out.
That's like a day. They have Miscarriage certificates. They do have Miscarriage. See, I'm a young lawyer trying to make it this world. You can afford them. Are you a Scotch guy? Are you a Scotch guy?
Yes.
What's Scotch?
What do you?
We'll see. What?
I will, well, I'll drink any Scotch.
Oh.
I won't drink any Scotch. I don't like the heavily peated stuff.
Right.
Like the Arbed, no thank you. Like the stuff that smells like a campfire, I'm not in. I'm not in for that.
But he's
Well, I
he's
mean,
not a Scotch
I
guy. You
purchased-
drink Scotch. That's different. Glenfiddich?
Yeah, it can be good. It can be good.
Yeah. You got 12, you're 18. It depends on what your acquired taste is. That gets into how they store it.
So what is it?
You know,